this is Dave from JamPlay, and in this lesson we'll be talking about pocket. What I'd like you to do in starting out this lesson is look at the supplemental materials provided. You'll see 3 sheets, one talking about a rock pocket, one talking about a Latin pocket, and the other one talking about a jazz pocket. And what I want to do in this lesson is really just set the stage for what's coming next and how and what pocket really is. So if you take a look at that rock pocket sheet, you'll see a big quarter note in the middle. And what I've got drawn is kind of a parenthesis to show the length of that note. A note, when it strikes in time, it not only holds just that one space in time, but it holds kind of a container of time. Because when you sing a quarter note, ba, it has a starting point, ba, ba, ba. And so there's a space created here. And what happens is when musicians capitalize on this, they can form what is called a pocket. You're going to see there's a difference between how you establish pocket in various styles. And I've just picked 3 styles just to kind of give you an example. In the rock example, you're going to see that on the back of the beat, you're going to see the snare drum. The snare drum plays a vital role in pulling everything back. I remember an instructor of mine used to tell me, picture the snare drum almost like a rubber band, and every time it pops, picture a rubber band pulling it back so you get that boom, 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 boom. And it basically, when you have a note, it goes boom, boom, boom. So at the very front of this beat comes the bass drum, comes a lot of things. Usually this is where notes that are or instruments that are going to push the beat are going to reside. Take a look at your sheet and you're going to see some various instruments recorded. You're going to see the 2 and 4 backbeat recorded, and they lie toward the back end of that quarter note. That is what's known as the backbeat. For those of you who've heard that term used, that's what it means. It refers to, you got a quarter note, boom, boom. The beat is hanging out on the back of that beat, that space and time. That note is not just, it doesn't just hit. You'll also notice in the middle of it is the keyboard and the synths. And a lot of times even the acoustic guitar tends to lie right in that pocket. A lot of times they'll tend to just hold the groove right there, and sometimes, like I did in the intro video, just kind of hold that snare drum back. I'll give you an example. So here you have a drum machine. It's setting a very calculated time, but it's not setting a whole lot of pocket. That snare drum is not human, it's digital. So we're gonna have to do a little bit of it ourselves by drawing back and feeling that rubber band, just to set a little bit of groove. It tends to be a little bit more difficult to feel when it's a digital drum set. But I just want you to conceptually understand how this works. The guitar part's going to rest in that pocket, and there's a tension playing between the drummer and the other instruments. If you'll notice, the lead guitar and vocals oftentimes fall out either right on the front, along with the bass and the kick drum, or the vocals and the lead guitar tend to even push a little bit before everything going. So you might have a beat going here, and the vocals, if they sing behind, ba, 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 ba. If they're behind the beat, you can see how that just doesn't feel right. If they're too far out ahead of the beat, ba, 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 ba. See if I can do it, it's a little difficult. Ba, 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 ba. If they're too far out ahead, it doesn't create a good beat or a good groove. The pocket is putting in tension that snare drum and some of that stuff that's lying at the front, the kick drum. Getting some of those things in tension and allowing the vocals and the lead guitar to almost seem like they're running away with the beat, like such. Ba 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 da 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 ba 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 you can just sense that I'm just a tad bit ahead of my strum pattern, which is creating a tension. So if you take this concept of a beat being a space and time, it kind of creates a space. Really what you're saying is the beginning of the beat sets that spot that it starts, and the end starts or ends it. And then everything else fills in the gap, and that's what creates that pocket where you have the synths and the keyboards, acoustic sitting in here. On the front end, you have the bass drum setting off that front beat. You have sometimes the lead guitar and acoustic and rhythm, sometimes even up on the front. Then you have the snare drum, and the snare drum is creating the back side of that beat. And all of that music just sits right in there and provides a nice little tension where it's not speeding up or slowing down. It just has a tension, and then out front of that lies the vocals. Okay, so for an example of all this together, if we were just to take our example, so here's the acoustic really setting that groove where that digital beat doesn't do it quite for us, but the bass would be boom ba 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 boom, right with that kick drum. The vocals ba ba da ba 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 da ba 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 ba. So this is a little bit conceptually what pocket means. Now if you were to take a look at the jazz pocket playing, for example, something switches. The beat still has that space provided, but in jazz we have the ride cymbal providing a little bit more of a laid-back feel. We have the hi-hat, ding, 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 ding. And in rock, whereas the bass drum and the snare create a pocket, in jazz, the ride cymbal and the hi-hat create a pocket, and the bass drum and the snare drum kind of dance in between there. And then rhythm guitar or supportive lead, they just kind of sit in the base of that pocket, maybe pushing out a little front of that pocket, but they want to relax it. It just kind of depends on the style of jazz. And then you have your lead vocals, or you have your horn section kind of out front, acting almost as the voice if it's not a vocalist. And your bass player as well is also just kind of pushing the beat, if not just relaxing it just a little bit. So you'll see the concept of pocket changes when it comes to style. One more example. If you also take a look, there's a supplemental aid provided for you that looks at Latin pocket playing. And we're going to touch on this a little bit more if you look up the lesson when we talk about Sunshine Love, which has a kind of a jazz beat to it and a Latin beat to it. But Latin music is created by what's called a clave. And the clave has a 2 and a 3 side to it. Sometimes it goes like this: 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Sometimes it switches around and goes 3, 2, 1, 1, dot, 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 1, 2, 3, dot, dot. When it made its way to America, this became the Bo Diddley rhythm. This is basically where we get all of rock music, is from this clave that comes out of Latin music. And this, depending on where that clave sits, and there's also, that's the son clave, there's also the rumba clave. The rumba clave is dot, dot, but, dot, 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 but. So it shifts the last on the 3 side, it switches to, instead of being on 4, it switches to the end of 4, and then you can switch it around and make it a 3-2. But. And then you have kind of your conga drums, your cowbell, your timbale, your bongo, your bass that kind of fall into the pocket. And then out in front is usually your vocalist, your piano player tends to be out in front, and your horns and your vocals and your lead player. And that gives a little bit of that tension. But that clave, in Latin music and Afro-Cuban music, it doesn't even feel like regimented beats. Like we have 4/4. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. All they do is they feel space. So that clave is going to feel more like this. it's going to fill more space. You can't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and dot. We square things out. They fill more space. Ba 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 ba. And so that's what provides that tension. Ba 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 ba. It just kind of pulls it back. So that's the idea behind pocket. The big idea that you need to take when you're approaching any kind of style is there's a tension going on. That's really the big idea behind all of this. And you need to know where that tension lies. A beat blown up is like this, and you need to know what sits on the front and what sits on the back, and depending on what instrument you're on, you need to know where you fit into the pocket of that. Since this is a guitar tutorial, predominantly as a rhythm player, as an acoustic player or a rhythm electric, you're going to be towards the middle and laying towards the back to establish that pocket, possibly up towards the front as you push. But mostly you're just going to sit right in that center, and if you weren't playing with a digital drummer, the snare drum should provide good tension for you to sit right there. If you're a lead player, you're going to reside pretty much in the front of the beat because you're acting more as a voice. When you're playing a solo, you're functioning more as a voice, and you're carrying the music, and they're holding you back, and you're drawing them forward. So I just want you to know what's going on when you're playing, and this will make you a more rhythmic player. This will make you more in tune with the other instruments and help you to find your place in the pocket.